So, if you could state your name and what you do.
Sure. My name is Suzanne Hadden, and I'm a designer and a package designer as well.
Amazing, Suzanne. And we talked previously about how you work with Starbucks and how did working with Starbucks influence your creative process with design and development.
Sure. When we started at Starbucks, it was quite interesting because there was no brand strategy behind the brand at the time. It was just the brand logo. So we had to develop the brand strategies kind of within the logo parameters and kind of create the storytelling. So we took the siren. So inside Starbucks logo is this woman, and she's a siren, and she's very seductive, and she does all these things. So we created stories for these sirens, and from her we created iconography. So we created that story of with visual identity. So we created logos and icons that kind of represented the story. We wrote about the story, so we had writers, and then from there, we kind of developed the style. Like, what is it going to look like? What's the iconography? What are they going to do? So we came up with this grow, brew, roast, and aroma story that each siren lived under. So there was like sirens had different personalities, just like the brand itself had different personalities. So we brought in the personalities of the siren into the brand and developed those further. And it was a great process because from that point on, we kind of started building out the brand and understanding where things sat. And so from brew, grow, roast, and aroma, we could then define what that meant. What does a brew store look like? What does an aroma store look like? What is the iconography going to be there? So we started then rolling it out and figuring out how is that going to work in a system.
Right. And how did your work with Starbucks also convey an emotion to an audience? And also, how did this influence your further projects along the track to convey emotions to an audience? Like, what things specifically do you always look for in
Sure.
projects to help you
Yeah, one
target
of
your
the
audience?
things that's really important to me when I'm designing is to understand the brand positioning or develop the brand positioning of that brand. And from the brand positioning, you can pull out five key differentiating words that kind of represent the brand. One of them with Starbucks was this handcrafted approach and personable and that touch and feel of a person. So it's very human centered. And so with that, we knew that we wanted really authentic artwork, everything done by a real artist, a real designer, and not something done by a computer. We wanted it to be authentic, handcrafted, beautiful. And that then started telling that story of how we crafted the type and what did the typography look like. And if it was hand drawn, even the type of lettering, if that was hand drawn, what would that look like? Would it be drawn in, or so then we started creating that language with typography, with illustration, with artwork that then started telling more of that story of how we wanted the customer. So whoever walked in the store, we wanted them to feel welcome, and we wanted them to feel connected to the brand. We thought, how do we create that connection? And one of the ways was to kind of make it flow and make everything have that flow. And we also decided that we wanted to have each store be not cookie cutter, but be different. So in order to do that and make it work, which is very hard because you need that cohesiveness around something, we decided to create the grow, roast, brew, and a roast stores. So each one, like if it was a grow store, we developed a whole bunch of iconography and storytelling that would just go and grow, and it wouldn't go in aroma. And then aroma had its own stories, and we talked about the smell and all these things. So that also created that storytelling that went within the brand. And from there, yeah, I've always been very artistic, and I paint, I draw, I create. And whenever I design a logo, I start drawing and using my hands. I cut paper, I do all sorts of things. Then I go into the computer. I mean, everything in the end of the day is going to be in the computer, but I start using my hands and kind of creating, and that also creates emotion, and it creates like more of a feeling in what you're doing. Like there's it's I feel like it's more coming from the heart. And when you're designing, we were trying to create Starbucks have more of a heart and more of a soul, as opposed to McDonald's or McD's. Like it's a cookie cutter look and feel inside, and we wanted to create something that had more of a breathing and feeling and emotion. And when you walked into each store, it was different, and you could see the similarities, but you couldn't tell what they were. And all of our murals had writing on them and storytelling in layers, so you couldn't always see it at first, but after a while you kind of like understand there's a story underneath it. And yeah, you get more from it. Every time you come back, there's more to find out. It's like a mystery. You're just unraveling the idea.
Absolutely. And so this collaboration is very important in the design process.
Mm-hmm.
As I told you about how I'm currently undertaking a group project in this class, and we are working on a way to bring Japanese denim to the Australian market, a way
Yep.
to kind of present that in a fashion that will encourage kind of like a bridge between Australia and Japan
Mm-hmm.
to create not only environmentally sustainable product, but also a way to create something that's personable and
Connected.
How would you go about creating a project, making something more personal?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, that's what I would probably start with, was kind of a mood board, and collect information and images that kind of have a bridge or a connection. I mean, you have the Japanese market and then you have the Australian market, and how do you combine them? How do you interweave them? I would play around with that idea. And there's got to be a bridge, like with your typography or however you do your expression. But like you said, there's a pull out your 5 keywords like environmental. It's handcrafted. It's longevity. It's a really well made material. The Japanese have a really style about them. They're very minimalist. So is the brand going to be really minimalist to fall into to kind of separate it from other brands that are in Australia that are maybe handcrafted but then more illustrative? So what is it that separates your brand and what you're developing for this particular product that you're bringing into Australia? What are you going to differentiate it? What is it? What's that change? So I would think about that, and then I would get examples of things like, things that have been designed prior. I look at everything. I go in and look at furniture, like look at Japanese furniture, look at Japanese product development, and the making of different things, and see how they do things, and bring that thought process into your brand. And they're very minimalist when they come to designing, and it's really beautiful. So they separate. I always think when you do Japanese or you do that style, you separate, you pull back. You start with something more complicated and you pull things apart till it's perfect. And that sort of like could be a thought process that you can put into your brand. I mean, just those different things of thinking differently, and taking that concept. Like one concept is called subtraction. I subtract things until it's so minimal, it's just perfect.